investigating Trump and democracy being on the line. Apparently, those are two issues that are at the forefront of voters' minds coming into the midterm elections in November. That is according to a recent NBC News poll, which is pretty interesting. And again, we're in the middle of the January 6th committee hearings. We're learning more and more about all different kinds of senators and congresspeople's involvement, and all the funny text messages that Fox News hosts have sent the chief of staff during that day. But let's look at some, let's talk about investigating Trump, right? So here was the idea. Okay, if the raid happens on Mar-a-Lago, it's gonna look, I think some were arguing, really, really bad for Democrats. What? Bad for Democrats? So this is the fear, right? This is the sort of centrist fear that often happens, which is like, if we do anything bold, maybe we will face backlash even though there was a literal crime committed. It turns out those centrist pollsters and pundits were wrong, because actually a majority of voters, a majority of all voters, approve of Trump investigations. This was the question: do you think investigations into alleged wrongdoing by the former president should continue because he needs to be held accountable, not continue because they're politically motivated and divide the nation? 57% said, yeah, they should continue. And that could be all the things, right? We're talking financial crimes, we're talking stolen documents crimes, we're talking overturning a democratic election crime, right? Like, there's many different buckets of crimes. It's a little bit of like one of those carnival games with the horses and which one's gonna get there first type thing. So that was pretty interesting. There's more on the January 6th events. A combined 50% of voters say Trump is solely or mainly responsible for January 6th, up 5 points since May, before the House committee investigating the attack began holding multiple televised hearings. That's compared with 49% saying Trump is only somewhat responsible or not responsible at all, which is down from 6 points in May. So those points correspond to my faith in the American people. Just like, all right, like this is doing something. That being said, and I don't know if this solidifies or dings my faith in the American people, what about Biden's job approval rating? Yeah, it's not really going nowhere. So back in April last year, it was at 51%. May of this year was 42%. August, still 42%. And again, this was August 12th through 16th. So the signature of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the climate bill, not been factored into this, it seems. So who knows? Maybe that approval rating will be bumped up a little bit, but it's very flatlined, it seems. In terms of who people want in charge, in November, 47% of registered voters prefer Republicans winning control of Congress, while 45% want Democrats in charge. Okay, in May's poll, the parties were tied 46-46. So again, yes, Trump did the wrong stuff, but I still want Republicans in power. This is why I hate polls. And then finally, Democratic enthusiasm does seem to be up, obviously, given the decision around Dobbs and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. According to this survey, the NBC News survey, 68% of Republicans express a high level of interest. This is just general excitement. General excitement might be. High level of interest in the upcoming election, registering either a 9 or 10 on a 10-point scale, versus 66% for Democrats. 2-point advantage, that 2-point GOP advantage is down from 17 points in March and 8 points in May. So it seems close now, but there was much more enthusiasm from Republicans before versus now. And Democrats, are we ever excited about anyone? No. The real thing, the real issue, the real graph, here we go. Here's an Iadarola graph for you. What issues matter most to voters? It seems like threats to democracy, #1, kind of far outstanding, almost to over 20%. Threats to democracy is the #1 issue, followed by cost of living, jobs in the economy, immigration, climate change, guns, abortion all the way down, which is surprising. So again, this doesn't feel like the most conservative poll, but threats to democracy feels like, despite Liz Cheney not winning her reelection campaign, feels like something that people are of all stripes, all political parties are coalescing around. The poll also, back to abortion rights, it did find that 58% of voters disapprove of Roe being overturned and 38% approve. So yes, everyone thinks the country's heading in the wrong direction. They've always thought that from the beginning of time and the beginning of polls. We don't need to go into that. Dan, 57%, yes, we should investigate Trump. 58% overturning of Roe v. Wade, not a good idea. What do you make of this and how it puts us going into these elections?
Yeah, to me, what it makes of it is that big picture over the past 2 years, like we've been in the minutia of all of the news and whatnot, but big picture over the past 2 years is that Joe Biden's administration tried to go in saying they would play ball and actually fight against obstructionist Republicans. They didn't really end up doing that much, and that's why you see the hit in Joe Biden's poll numbers, at least why I speculate. Republicans went in on culture issues. They started with Dr. Seuss books just to feel the waters out. Then they went towards cancel culture and wokeism in Florida and creating all these other permutations of the word woke that clearly makes you know that they never talked to any black people about it. And continuing to kind of go all in on, I think, going too far in overturning Roe v. Wade and going buck wild with threats to democracy. So I think those things are top of mind, and I'm happy to see, all these polls are little bits of data literally, and they're moments in history of snapshots, because I remember a CNN poll that was from late July that was basically saying that people's opinions of Trump and January 6th, while the majority of them said that, okay, he seems to have done something wrong. Even a lot of people said that it was outright illegal what he did. It seemed that from that poll that people's opinions hadn't really changed as a result of the hearings. So I don't know, maybe that poll was new, maybe the information's marinating a little bit more. But to me, the top line thing there is, I'm happy that at least a poll seems to suggest that threats to democracy are a top line issue. It's been a top line issue, I know, in our heads for at least since before 2016, if not before that. But all the other things there, abortion's a little bit lower than I'd like to see on the list. Climate change, for how long you and I and all the folks on Damage Report have been doing the show, to see it that high in a poll of issues Americans care about, that's great. And so hopefully the Inflation Reduction Act, which I hope, if Democrats are able to message the name of that act and point to things that are actually going well, while inflation seems to be heading down or like being flatlining right now, then maybe that will be the smartest thing Joe Manchin's done for the party so far. Because naming that and marketing off of that, Democrats aren't great at marketing or messaging. But if they can turn that and say, look, we did a thing for you that addresses climate change and the economy and jobs and the stuff that apparently polls say y'all are interested in, that should ideally translate to what leftists have been screaming about this entire 2 years, which are bring material issues to voters and they will reward you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And oh man, giving Manchin credit, woo, yee. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, yes, addressing real world issues is interesting. I mean, is very, very important. But this also shows you that politically, they're like, but we also need to make sure crooks aren't necessarily running the country. And like between, again, the documents being taken, this is a poll that was conducted after the raid, between the financial crimes that we know are unfolding in New York courts, and obviously the January 6 hearings, like some of that is starting to percolate. So I do feel like, oftentimes I'm like, we're so Trump obsessed, Trump, blah, blah, blah. And yet to have any kind of accountability, to move on in any kind of way. Yeah, we gotta slay this dragon dead, all right? This is not a good dragon, all right? I'm sorry, Dragon Squad. But like, this is insanely critical, and it seems like it's not falling on deaf ears. It seems like there is strategy. For once, it might be paying off for Democrats. That being said, you gonna pass any kind of voting rights legislation? Oh, okay, no, never mind. All right, no, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. We can just let that languish.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.